Welcome to Vinyl Riffs with Sean Gaillard, where we explore the music, grooves, and stories that continue to shape our lives. Today marks the 60th anniversary of Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. 60 years later, this album still feels alive. It still feels vulnerable, and it still feels deeply human. Here's a copy of it right here, one of my many copies of this masterpiece. Pet Sounds is one of those albums that stays with you. It finds new meaning as your life changes. I have been carrying this album with me since 1986 when I first picked up a cassette copy of it as a teenager. Something about it immediately connected with me, my 16-year-old self, and it still connects with me even today. As a kid, the song God Only Knows off this album especially resonated with me. There was something about the sincerity of it, the tenderness, the vulnerability, the melodic bass lines. Even then, I could tell that this was not ordinary pop music. There was something deeper happening inside this album, well beyond its grooves. Over the years, Pet Sounds became more than a favorite album for me. It became a template for creative courage. And this template is something I want to touch upon very briefly here. Creative courage is something that Brian Wilson had a vision for. He had a vision for something bigger and more emotionally expansive than what the Beach Boys had been known for at that point. The band had built tremendous success around surfing, cars, and California sunshine. Pet Sounds, that project, asked the band to trust a completely different direction in which Brian Wilson was taking them. It also took a lot of courage, major courage, in the face of profit, hits, relevance, chart history, television appearances, and concerts. Brian Wilson heard possibilities other people did not fully hear yet. He challenged the limits of what popular music could become. The arrangements were daring. The emotions were honest. The production still sounds breathtaking 60 years later. And keep in mind, Brian Wilson was only 23 years old when he arranged and composed and produced this album. What amazes me about Pet Sounds is that this is an album that did not simply influence listeners. It changed music history itself. You cannot talk about Pet Sounds without talking about its connection to the Beatles. Paul McCartney has often spoken about the profound impact the album had on him and how it inspired the Beatles to creatively scale new heights during one of the most groundbreaking periods of their own career. You can hear the conversation between these bands unfolding in real time through albums like Rubber Soul, Pet Sounds, and Revolver. Rubber Soul, I might add you, by the Beatles, was the album that directly inspired Brian to create what he called the greatest album ever made. That creative exchange between the Beach Boys and the Beatles pushed everyone higher. It also created a sounding board for innovation and creativity, which still stays with us today. What remains so powerful about Pet Sounds is that the music still sounds emotionally true. You can hear longing throughout these songs. You can hear uncertainty, hope, tenderness, loneliness, and beauty. It's a song cycle that still resonates today, 60 years later. Most importantly, you can hear humanity. the humanity within the harmonies, the humanity within the grooves and the production. Maybe that is why the album continues to resonate across generations. Younger listeners are still discovering it for the first time. Musicians still study it. Books have been written about it. Fans still debate favorite songs and mixes, whether you prefer the stereo mix or the mono mix. Writers and storytellers continue to reflect on Pet Sounds' emotional power. That is why I wanted this episode of Vinyl Riffs to become more than a podcast episode. I wanted it to become a conversation. Very much like the vision of Brian Wilson wanting to create an album for people to feel spiritual love and connection and kinship. So I want to ask you something very simply about Pet Sounds. Listen up to this question. What is it about Pet Sounds that means so much to you? What does Pet Sounds mean to you? I'm anxious to hear your responses, and I'm anxious to start a conversation on a masterpiece. Maybe Pet Sounds is connected to a memory for you. Maybe it is connected to a pivotal moment where it helped shape your love of music as it did for me. Maybe it found you during a difficult season and the music healed you and inspired and uplifted your soul. Maybe one song from the album still stops you in your tracks every single time you hear it. And maybe that album has connected you to a loved one or a family member or a friend. I would love for you to share your reflections, memories, and favorite moments from the Pet Sounds album in the comments here and across social media. I will be curating responses from listeners, musicians, writers, podcasters, and fellow music lovers as part of this 60th anniversary celebration. Feel free to tag me as well, and I'll be sure to respond to keep the conversation going. Music still matters because it helps us understand what it means to be human. It's that divine language which connects all of us and knows no boundary and transcends all categories and transcends all barriers. Pet Sounds reminds us that vulnerability can become artistry. It reminds us that creative risks can endure for generations. And it also reminds us that trusting a vision can change the world. 60 years later, this masterpiece still speaks, and it still resonates, and it still connects. I'm anxious to hear your thoughts and your words on Pet Sounds. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being part of this conversation. And thanks to the Beach Boys, Tony Asher, the lyricist, for many of these songs, for creating a masterpiece which still stays with us today, 60 years later. Thanks to the Wrecking Crew musicians as well who performed on this. Until next time, keep spinning, keep grooving, and keep believing. This is Sean Gaillard with Vinyl Riffs. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to catch you on the flip side.